Justin Simons from Hillbrook Partners. I think, Tony, at the end of your presentation, you made a call to arms for the silent majority to come forward and push for this new capacity. I'm just wondering if that silent majority should include some of Heathrow's major customers, as in airline customers, who seem to be amongst the silent majority. And I wonder if it's got something to do with Sophie's interesting message that they're ready to put 30 aircraft and offer more competition. So interested in what you've got to say.
We all know what you're referring to. Look, this is a hugely complicated project in some ways, and the positions of the airlines really are overall, of course, in favour of expansion. I think all airlines see that. And while I'm not going to speak on behalf of any particular airline, there is clearly some concern that this is politically undeliverable. I personally believe that we've got to watch out that doesn't become self-fulfilling, because we do need to expand airport infrastructure, not only here but elsewhere around the world. It's the same story all around the world, that airport infrastructure is difficult to expand, but if we didn't expand it, our industry would go nowhere. So I think everybody really agrees that we do need to expand this infrastructure, but there needs to be a fair way of doing it, a fair way of paying for it, and some airlines, particularly those with strong, obviously vested interests in the airports here in London, have understandably very deep concerns about how those things will work out, and they haven't worked out very well sometimes in the past. So naturally, there's some serious concern about that, some of which I think I alluded to in my remarks.
So is that a reference to BA, who of course we did invite to come today and they declined?
Well, I'm not going to speak on behalf of BA. They're quite capable of speaking on their own behalf.
But there is a perception that they're very worried that others are now going to come and be playing around in their own back garden, so to speak.
What would worry me if I was running BA, which I'm not, would be there's a huge amount of money about to be spent, and everyone will naturally turn to the airlines currently at Heathrow to front up with that money, and that's not going to work. And I think we have to recognise that approach isn't going to work. And if that can be made clear, then perhaps it'll be easier to give more, for all airlines involved, to give more unequivocal support to moving forward.
Okay, Sophie?
Yeah, just at one point really to add to that, just to set that 30 aircraft in context, obviously that is a lot of aircraft, that would give us around 7% share of the slots at Heathrow. BA currently have around 51% share, and Virgin have 5%. So although we would become an important player at Heathrow, we would by no means have any size or extent that BA would have. And we would continue to have our largest airport at Gatwick, where we currently have 58 aircraft. So just to put that in context in terms of the size of our operation there versus BA. And exactly as Tony says, I mean, our biggest concern at any airport is around pre-funding, and that's what we are adamant that shouldn't happen. And as I said in my speech, it's not fair that BA and Virgin should take that and then us come in and have the benefit. So it's only fair that we help lobby for a different method of financing that doesn't involve pre-funding the existing airlines who are in the airport.
And Sophie, would EasyJet ever consider sort of interlinking into a BA flight, one leg of it, or any other of the major carriers?
Yeah, it's interesting. Where we already operate into Gatwick, we do have people that self-connect. So passengers are doing it themselves because we operate a lot of the domestic. So naturally, us operating, if we open up Inverness, which would be a new route into Heathrow, you would naturally get people self-connecting. In terms of our model, we like to keep it simple. That's how we can keep the costs down. And I think once you start adding interlining into other carriers, it becomes very complex. So for the moment, it's not something we're actively considering doing, but we want to make it as easy as possible for passengers to be able to do that themselves.
But nothing formal at the moment?
No.
Okay, all right.
Malcolm Ginsberg, Business Travel News. I'm from London. I was born in Hayes, Middlesex, on the Bath Road. So, there we are. Two questions. One for Sophie, and that's, at the moment, British Airways are now going to have total Edinburgh, I think, and Aberdeen routes to themselves. Why can't EasyJet come in now and give some competition. You do have routes with very small numbers on them, so that's not a very good argument. The other one is just generally speaking as a journalist. I received about 15 comments, presentations from everybody on the Davis report. The one company I did not receive from, and I phoned the press office and I did the usuals, was of course British Airways. They seem to have a policy of totally ignoring it. You get the feeling they've got 54%, I believe, not 51, but it matters not. You get the feeling they don't actually want the competition from the other carriers. 15 people said, most of them saying, what a wonderful idea, but not a word, no response, absolutely nothing from IAG or its British Airways partner.
Okay. Well, to a certain extent, we have dealt with British Airways, but Sophie, do you want to take that point about the routes to Aberdeen and Edinburgh?
Absolutely. So, as you're probably aware, Virgin Little Red have been operating those connections into Heathrow and haven't been able to make a commercial success of it. On the back of that, I've had the Scottish Transport Minister and people from Heathrow and from the Scottish airports talking to us directly to say, would we start an operation into Heathrow using those Virgin Little Red slots, because they're quite keen that they maintain those connections into Scotland with another carrier as well as having BA on the route. But to be honest, I mean, we've looked at it, but 6 slots a day into Heathrow really isn't going to be a viable commercial operation for us. Somewhere like Heathrow, you need to go in there with a significant amount of capacity to operate the right type of routes and the frequencies that people want. So for us, although we looked at it seriously to pick up that capacity, with just 6 slots, it's not a commercial viability for us at the moment.
Jock Lowe, retired head of operations control of BA for a different hat. Let me answer for BA, although I'm not sure I can now, but BA and Willie Walsh stood up when the third runway was agreed and put his head above the water and supported it and said, great idea, we go ahead. And nobody else did. So I can't see them using any political capital supporting a third runway when they genuinely believe it probably won't go ahead. But they did it and they got their fingers burnt. But my question really is for EasyJet. The slots from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock are already pretty full, and if you move the night quota flights, that's 16 flights for arrivals, there's not many opportunities to get many aircraft out before 9 o'clock. So how you can get 30 aircraft operating 2.5 or even 3 rotations a day, so it was a bit mathematically impossible. So are you basing your case on lower numbers of rotations and sectors or a smaller number of aircraft?
Yeah, thanks, Jock. Actually, we are basing it on the information we had when we put our submission into the Airports Commission. And obviously, one of the things we didn't have visibility then was Howard Davis' recommendation to have the night curfew. So we based it on the information that was available to us at the time. So obviously, that will incur shift in capacity to a slightly later time and taking that peak morning. Obviously, we only found out about that on Wednesday. So I'm talking about, I guess, our submission to the Commission that we put forward, which was we could see viability of having 30 aircraft there. I don't know the details in terms of what that looks like now. And I guess it depends on the next 6 months or so of consultation and what the outcome of that is. Obviously, you're right. Our planning is to utilise our aircraft as much as we do out of any other airport. It's not to take any sacrifice on that. So that's the basis of our case that we've put forward.
And is it not the case that with a new runway there will be more opportunities anyway? I mean, that will just increase the capacity. No?
The point is, I think, that if you move the current night slots into the first hour of operation after 6 a.m., and by the way, I think although it's an average of 16 a day, it goes up to some days it's over 20, I think. Then you constrain you won't actually have a lot more new slots available early in the morning. I think that's the point, Jock, isn't it? Yeah.
There will be some?
I'm not an expert. There must be some, but I don't believe there are that many.
That many, okay.
John Stewart from Haycan. Tony, you said what conditions you didn't like, but you didn't say what conditions you would like. Are you saying there are conditions you would accept, or are you saying you would like a runway to go ahead without conditions and simply on the vague notion of the balance principle, which didn't work last time?
Look, we recognise that any development will have to have measures in it which mitigate the environmental impact, and particularly the noise one. As I mentioned, as far as CO2 emissions goes, that should be looked after by the international agreement. Domestically, they'll have to be part of the UK quota, and as far as local air quality is concerned, the law will have to apply to that. But as far as noise is concerned, of course there are going to have to be some mitigating measures taken. What I'm saying is that the rather prescriptive measures, such as no night jet movements anymore, very prescriptive measures like that, may not be the best way forward. And I believe they're probably not the best way forward. We could probably find a better way forward if we can actually engage in a sensible dialogue with all stakeholders. That's what I'm saying.
I think we would say that ACAM, we've got a sensible dialogue already with Heathrow, but we'd also say that prescriptive measures are the only things that actually give reassurance to residents that they will actually happen. It's the vagueness of not having these prescriptive measures that actually, in my view, will make a third runway impossible to deliver.
Well, once measures are agreed, of course, they would then become prescriptive. What I'm saying is that the long list of measures, which aren't all, some financial, some operational, together puts forward, I think, a disproportionate package, which may well not work, and we need to have a continued dialogue on a workable system that will balance all the necessary and competing considerations.
One last question. Have you any, repeat my first question, have you any measures that you think are workable? Because you haven't come up with any so far.
No, I'm not going to start negotiating here.
Okay. I think on that note, we are probably going to wrap it up there. So thank you very much, Tony and Sophie. Thank you.